السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وما بعد، جزاكم الله خير. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, we're going to jump into the subject of today, inshallah, which is common sins that people are committing nowadays, and what's their cure. And the sin of today is neglecting the Quran. The sin of today is neglecting the Quran. So let us talk about today, bidnillah ta'ala, what does it mean that people neglect the Quran? I'm going to start this talk with mentioning a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شفيعا لأصحابه." Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Read the Quran because it's going to come in the hereafter as an intercessor for you and those who owns it." Okay. And another hadith, he said, "اقرأوا الزهروين." Read يعني البقرة وآل عمران فإنهما تأتيان يوم القيامة كأنهما غمامتين. Because these two surahs, they would come in the hereafter as two clouds, you know, تحجان عن أصحابهما. They would try to shield their owners. So brothers and sisters, these two hadith talks about the importance of reading the Quran or reading certain verses of the Quran or certain chapters of the Quran, because at the end of the day, in the hereafter, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ, that in that day everybody's going to be running away from each other. Even your mother would run away from you, your father would run away from you, your friends would obviously going to run away from you. And what really going to matter is that of the certain things that we have done that we were tested with, whether we're going to do or not. And notice that these things, as the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and the way that some of our scholars have translated, that these chapters or the action of you reading the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make them into individuals, and they would intercede in your behalf, or they would talk into your behalf, or defend you in your behalf. Okay. And notice in both hadith what this says. Prophet Muhammad said, "Shafi'an li ashabi," those who are companions with. The Quran would intercede those who are who own them, who are companions with. So brothers and sisters, here we're not talking about someone who read one verse a day, or one verse a week, or one page a week. No, we're talking about somebody who is befriending the Quran. Person, and both ahadith mention the person who is befriending them, with them, a companion with them. So the question here, brothers and sisters, are you in a relationship with the Quran that you would be called a companion, a friend? Because a friend always touches with their companion. They touch base with them all the time. If they have a question, they go back to them. If they want to have fun, they sit with them, and etc. So brothers and sisters, you have to understand, are you in that type of relationship with the Quran, that the Quran is always beside you? You have a pocket Quran in your pocket, or you're listening to it all the time, that you always try to read Quran when in your free time. You try to don't lose what you have memorized from the Quran, And again, الإمام الشوكاني, what he said, وصاحبهما هو المستكثر قراءتهما. He said the person who is considered to be a friend, who's always reading. Oh, he does not let go. There is not a day that passes by without him reading the Quran. Not a person who have a relationship with the Quran once a year during Ramadan, or whenever he's in trouble, or whenever there is an occasion, there is a wedding, or there is some sort of occasion that I have to read the Quran. No, he's always touching base with the Quran. And that's the question that you need to ask yourself. Are you that individual? You know? And again, like I mentioned that yani, in that day, brothers and sisters, everybody's gonna run away from each other. Everybody's gonna run away from each other. And what matters is what things that prophet that a relationship that you have established, a righteous relationship, that's the one who's gonna stand out in that day. So, brothers and sisters, يعني, understand this aspect, and also I'm going to mention another hadith where Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إن القرآن يلقى صاحبه يوم القيامة حين ينشق عن قبره كالرجل الشاحب. He said, a person would meet the Quran, or his Quran, the Quran that he had been reading, as soon as he exit the grave, and as soon as what the day of judgment would be called upon. So as soon as your grave opens up and you get out of your grave, you will see your Quran, you know. And the Quran will say, هل تعرفني? Do you know me? فيقول ما أعرفك. Because like, I don't know you. He said, أنا صاحبك. I was your friend. القرآن الذي أظمأتك في الهواجر. I'm the Quran who made you thirsty. You know, meaning that, you know, I made you stay away from food certain times. وأسهرتك ليلتك, and I'm not the one who used to make you stay up late at night. وإن كل تاجر من وراء تجارته. Everybody, يعني, if you invest in something, you will get it back. وإنك اليوم من وراء كل تجارة. And now you're going to see the results of each and every investments that you have made. فيعطى الملك بيمينه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give him kingship in his right. والخلد بشماله, and eternity in his left. So look at this. Yeah, look at the honor this person is receiving. He will be getting kingship in his right, and eternity. He'll be lived for eternity in his left. ويوضع على رأسه تاج, and he'll be given a crown on top of his head. ويكسى والده حلتين لا يقوم لهما أهل الدنيا, and both his parents will be giving jewels that everybody in this dunya would admire, would say, wow. Yeah, here we're talking about the fanciest of the fanciest, you know. فيقولان بما كسينا هذا, and your parents would say, why you have given us all these things. فيقال بأخذ والدكم القرآن, because you have made your son يعني be with the Quran. ثم يقال له اقرأ واصعد في الدار الجنة, and he will be told to read and recite and elevate. He'll recite each and every ayah in the Quran that he recite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would elevate him one level. فهو في صعود ما دام يقرأ هذا أو ما دام يقرأ هذا. He's in a continuous ascent in Jannah as long as he's reciting. And that's why, brothers and sisters, they say, how many levels are in Jannah? Because we know that Jannah is in levels. The levels of Jannah is how many verses in the Quran. Because you're reciting, and every time you recite an ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate you one level in Jannah. So, so the question that we need to ask ourselves, brothers and sisters, what are the disease when someone neglects the Quran? First of all, you have a destructive heart. When someone neglects the Quran, your heart is empty. Your heart is destroyed. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن الذي ليس في جوفه شيء من القرآن كالبيت الخرب. An individual who does not have inside of him anything from the Quran, he is like a destroyed house. And subhanAllah, he could look nice from the outside. He could be the most beautiful person from the outside, the best of clothes, but inside, كالبيت الخرب, a destroyed house. And subhanallah, يعني, and that's unfortunately the situation that many times we tend to experience these days, is that many people go after looks, how he looks looking from the outside, but people neglect their inside whatsoever. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed from the Quran what is a cure and mercy for the believers. So, brothers and sisters, understand, the more you collect from the Quran, the more you collect from the Quran, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you cure. The more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would elevate you. You know, and here we're talking about cure from what? Cure from all the diseases of society, the disease of hypocrisy, the disease of not having tranquility, the disease of dispute, the disease of psychological illnesses. You know, so for subhanallah, the Quran is not only a cure but also a prevention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ma huwa shifa'un wa rahma." Shifa is a cure. Quran is a cure for our heart. But what about the mercy? What does that mean? Meaning it's a prevention too. It's wiqaya. It's a prevention from getting these things. So, brothers and sisters, understand that when someone does not read the Quran, their heart is destroyed. They have no cure and they have no immunity. They have no prevention. And that's the problem. That you would wonder why people nowadays, there is so much dispute. There is so many people are fighting. There are so many psychological illnesses. There are so many people are overthinking things. Why? Because the Quran is not there in their life. So that's number one. The second thing is that understand the following: that you want to make your house. You want to make your house as a house of righteousness, even if it was something small. Yeah, nowadays people looking after castles. They want to buy castles, villa, etc. But let me share with you what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud once said. He said, "إن أصغر البيوت بيت ليس فيه من كتاب الله." He said the smallest of houses in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sight of His angels, is a house that does not have the book of Allah. The book of Allah is not recited in. فَقْرَأُوا القرآن. He said, read the Quran. Read the Quran. فإنكم تؤجرون عليه بكل حرف عشرة حسنات. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for each and every letter that you recite 10 hasanat, 10 rewards. وما أقول لكم ألف لام ميم ولكن أقول ألف ولام وميم. And even ألف لام ميم, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, is not one one word. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you 10 rewards for the alif and the lam and the meme. 10, 10, 10. So imagine the amount of reward that someone will be getting. So, brothers and sisters, another another saying of Abu Huraira, he said a very beautiful thing. He said, "Inna al-bayta la yattasi ala ahlihi," that the house who the Quran is recited in will be expanded. وتحضره الملائكة, the angels will be present. وتهجره الشياطين, and the Satans would leave out of it. ويكثر خيرا, and the goodness out of that house would overflow. And vice versa. And a house that the Quran is not recited in, it would feel small. It would feel so small, and the angels would not be get inside of it. It would be full of Satans. So which house you want to have? That's another point. A third point is that, like I said, it also affects the stability of your heart. The stability of your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. So we could confirm your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confirmed the heart of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the Quran. So every time you're going through trials, going through tests, going through different bumps in life, person who recite the Quran, they're more stable. They're cruise controlling because they have the immunity, they have the strength, they have the consciousness, they have the divine support, the fact that they are reciting the Quran. Unlike some, because that's why you see people all over the place. Every time they go through something small, they feel it all. Oh, they're aching and they're in a hospital and they're depressed and they're overthinking and they want to commit a suicide and etc. So think about that, brothers and sisters. The fourth point, that it prevents you from all these psychological illnesses. And like I know I'm kind of over mentioning this, but it's a fact that we should also mention, because it's a major point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. And whoever get away from my remembrance, get away from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make his life dunk, misery. And look at the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for the Quran, dunk. And even when you say that word, and even you don't, possibly, maybe if you don't understand Arabic, you would understand it's a negative thing. Dunk. Subhanallah, look at look at how, even that shows you the beauty of the Quran, that it would make your life misery. It's even if you own millions, wallahi, even if you own millions, you'll see their life full of misery, because not money can buy possibly material things, but cannot buy your heart, cannot buy your tranquility, cannot buy a peace of mind. وتطمئن وتطمئن قلوبكم بذكر الله. And because your heart would have tranquility by remembering the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. The fifth point, understand, brothers and sisters, that the fact that some of us might not read the Quran a lot, might not read the Quran a lot because of our shortcomings. Uthman ibn Affan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with what he said, لو طهرت قلوبكم ما شبعتم من كلام ربكم. He said, if your heart was pure, if your heart were pure, you would not get enough of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That shows us what, that some people, it could be an aftermath effect, because you commit so many sins, and as a result, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not allow you to get closer to the Quran, and it could be a consequence. And again, another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يَعْشُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّضْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Whoever get away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have a qareen, a shaitan, with him all the time. وَإِنَّهُمْ لَيَصُدُّونَهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ. And this shaitan would always try to deviate him. So brothers and sisters, look at your life. What are you doing? Evaluate. Because thing is, sometimes you have to get into, in order to say, I want to read the Quran, look what some sins you're committing, and you continue to commit. And that could be the reason maybe you're not getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So brothers and sisters, sometimes we have to try to evaluate our situation. See where you're standing. See what's the cause of you being far away from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the punishment, unfortunately, is continuous, not just in this dunya, also in the hereafter, or even when you're in your grave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يَعْرِضْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّهِ يَسْلُكْهُ عَذَابًا صَعْدًا. Whoever get away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah would continue his punishment. يَسْلُكْهُ, meaning that even during his grave. The word here, يَسْلُكْهُ, meaning that it's continuous. It talks about it's not going to stop. So brothers and sisters, is it really worth it? That we are starving ourselves so that we would not irrigate our hearts with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And understand, and whether we like it or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us a scene from the hereafter, where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter, and would tell him, oh Allah, my ummah, my nation have neglected the Quran. And that's to the question here, brothers, are you a person who's neglecting the Quran? And imagine, brothers and sisters, that as soon as in the hereafter, one of the beginning scenes in the hereafter, that that the believers would be united with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the lake of Al-Kawthar. And imagine, as you're trying to see your prophet for the very first time, you try to see him, all of a sudden you'll be dragged away from him. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yeah, the angels would hold you back. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say, Ummati, Ummati, he's one of my followers. But the angels would respond back to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would say, إنك لا تدري ما أحدث من بعدك. You, O Prophet of Allah, you don't know what this person have done after your death. He changed the religion. He neglected your book. He spent most of his life playing, having fun and games and etc. So think about that, brothers and sisters. The final point is that, and I think that's a very important point, is that a person who neglects the Quran have no tranquility. And wallahi, brothers and sisters, the money of the world would not buy this tranquility. You know? Yeah, and one time, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, told him that there's a person who recites the Quran over his horse, and all the time there is a cloud above him. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Tilka as-sakina tatanazzalu lil-Quran." This is what the tranquility that comes with the blessings of the Quran. And look at this. You feel calm. You feel the tranquility. You feel the peace. Don't you want that? The Quran is the key to our heart, brothers and sisters, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that heart, like I say all the time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the keys that fit that heart. So the question here, brothers and sisters, how can I as an individual get to that cure or overcome that sin? The number one is that you would start with a word, something consistent that you would recite daily. And the word we use here is word. What does the word word mean? Word is the person who tried to drink something. So this is kind of the way you irrigate your heart daily, and something that is consistent and nothing small. We're not saying, oh, I'm going to read a couple of ayahs and I said, no, something that have to be of value, it have to be few pages a day at least, and that's the minimum, So what is your word? And keep that consistent, and you could increase on that. Number two is that try to do that in the early morning, because the morning have a lot of barakah, have a lot of blessings. And also, brothers and sisters, understand that whoever give things up for the Quran would give you itself. If you sacrifice for the Quran would sacrifice for you. Meaning that the more you try to invest in the Quran, the more you try to read from the Quran, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give you more blessings of the Quran. You will see things opening up for you. You will start thinking of new things, new ideas, new ways would open up for you. So the more you surrender yourself, the more the blessings is going to surrender itself to you. Understand, brothers and sisters, that, and as one of the scholars said, his name is Hassan ibn Ali. He said, إن من كان قبلكم رأوا القرآن رسائل من ربهم فكادوا يتدبرونها بالليل ويتفقدونها في النهار. He said, people before, they used to see the Quran as messages from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. So they would think about it during the night time, and they would look for it during the daytime. So every time we read the Quran, understand, you're not just merely reading it or just trying to get the barakah out of it. These are messages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is specifically sending to you. And wallahi, you would see that. Think about it. Every time you see a verse, it's a message to you. Sometimes you will see you're going through a phase in your life and you read the Quran as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you something. So think about it this way. The fifth cure, don't give excuses to yourself. There is a Palestinian sheikh who was crippled. And one time people noticed him in his house in the middle of the night, mumbling. And someone was beside him flipping pages. The guy was crippled. He could not move his hand. But he had someone beside him who could turn the page for him. And he would say, Al-awradu ya shabab, al-awradu ya shabab. Oh, young people, what is your word? What is your word? If a crippled person who could not move his legs and hands was able to do so, what about you? What's your excuses? So think about that, brothers and sisters. Final 2 points. One of the big reasons why possibly you're not reading the Quran, because the Quran is, your heart is filled with something else other than the Quran. And one of the biggest things that fill the hearts nowadays is what? Songs. The heart, we always said this, the heart is like a vase or like a bottle. Can be filled with good things or bad things. If it was filled with songs, the Quran is not going to get into it. And if it was filled with the Quran, the songs would not get into it. And that's why Imam al-Qayyim, he said, ما اجتمع في قلب عبد قط محبة الغناء ومحبة القرآن إلا طردت إحداهما الأخرى. He said, in a heart, the two loves of would not unite. The love of the Quran and the love of songs is either one is going to kick the other person out. So think about it. Maybe you want to kick something out of your house, out of your phone, out of your ears, before you surrender yourself to the Quran. Also, brothers and sisters, make the Quran something great in your sight. Make the Quran something great in your sight. Not in anything can interrupt your reading of the Quran. If you are reading the Quran and you are reading the word of Allah, the greatest, not every single thing that comes by should stop you. If someone calls, stop the call. If something calls you, tell them I'm going to respond later. Because it's a way of respect. Like, for instance, if I'm talking to my father, and my child calls on me, I'm going to ignore him, right? Because I'm talking to somebody I respect and I honor. What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If you start talking to a mayor or the president, what would you do? And you get a small call, what are you going, you're going to ignore it, right? Because you're talking to the president. But what about when you are talking to Rabbil Alameen? So, because a lot of time these side issues could sidetrack you. Oh, okay, I'm going to answer this call, and I'm going to talk to this person, and I'm going to do this chore, and then end up you're not reading the Quran. But when you give the Quran its respect and its honor, you'll be able to read more and more from the Quran. Brothers and sisters, understand these are some of the cures, inshallah. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make us among the people who are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and closer to His book. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to make us among the people who neglect the Quran. Jazakumullah khair. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all of you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.